Hello, one and all, and welcome back. Yes, back to the Great Unknown Audio Show with me, your illustrious host, and most appropriate face for radio, Maxim Jennings. And we start this episode by just casting your minds back to when I left you in the last instalment. I just arrived at Cradle Mountain Discovery Park for my 2-night stay here at this very notorious National Park, one of Tasmania's most famous outdoor activity centres. And so, before I get really into the meat and two veg of this episode, I'd just like to tell you a quick story about when I arrived at the caravan park. After driving in and parking up in a bay that was not really meant for me, but I took it anyway, because my spaces was already taken by too many cars. Ridiculous. And I get into the kitchen, I'm quite hungry. And when I arrive, I start making some pesto pasta. But then I see a family of 4 and a small child, and I hear them speaking a bit of Hindi. And I ask them. I take a few glances up and down just to kind of gather my thoughts to see whether my presumptions were correct. And I asked them, "Are you guys Nepalese?" And their eyes lit up. They went, yeah. We've lived in Australia for 12 years, but we're from Nepal. How did you know that? I was like, well, I actually visited Nepal last month, and I absolutely loved it. And so we got into a long conversation about where I went and the ABC trek. One of the guys who I was speaking to was not only a big Manchester City fan, but had done the majority of treks across the Himalayas, and he was very, very impressed by the fact that Nick and I had done our trek without any guide or porters. So anyway, we got talking. Their food smelled amazing, and fortunately enough, they offered me some of their goat curry, and I how could I refuse that gesture of kindness? So I ended up having 2 meals, as I'd already got my pasta on the go, a goat curry for starters, and then a pesto pasta for almost a second dinner, which is an absolutely fantastic start to my stay here in Cradle Mountain. And now we get into what was a really unforgettable day. The weather, unfortunately, before I get into it, was not up to scratch, unfortunately. It was pelting down with rain when I got up at about 8:30 and left for Cradle Mountain at around 9. And it was relentless throughout the entirety of my trek, in which I walked over 32 kilometres over the course of 7 hours. And I have to say, even though the weather was terrible, my voice is filled with so much exuberance because it has been such a fantastic day. And I did the Cradle Mountain Summit, and I decided to walk from the visitor centre, which is it adds another 7-kilometre boardwalk alongside that, which leads you up to Ronnie Creek, which is kind of the first checkpoint in the Cradle Mountain Park, and that was very nice. It was very much filled with lots of greenery and forest from side to side, which was lovely. And then I decided to go up the mountain, passing a place called Marion's Lookout. I will put the audio in of what I recorded from the top of Marion's Lookout. Not the nicest of views, but some good parts along the way. Not as cool as Nepal, not as cold as Nepal, but we're going to get there. Hopefully not much further. I was hoping to see the sunset today, but I think that might be out of the question. To record some stuff on the mic and not just do a review, but the weather was so torrential, and it really would have destroyed all of my equipment. The wind was howling and the rain was just pelting down for the entirety of my trek. But anyway, we carried on. We got to Marion's Lookout, which was probably about a third of the way there to the summit of Cradle Mountain, which was my end goal. I didn't really know much about it. I just had saw a few recommendations on the travel blogs, like usual, and just thought, yeah, hey, why not? I had to sign in before starting Cradle Mountain, or I think a few other walkers had done the same, but they were doing the the outward walk, I think it was called, which didn't go up the mountain, which is probably the smart thing to do considering the weather conditions. But anyway, past Marion's Lookout, there was then a kind of a hut where you could warm up just for a few minutes. But if you stayed in there for too long, you're obviously going to get too cold because you are soaking wet. My feet were just filled with puddles of water. And from Marion's Lookout to this hut, it was just kind of open plains. There was no trees really covering you up and blocking away any of the wind. So it was pretty ghastly. But I stopped. I had a banana, an apple, and an orange, which was very important. Had a few sips of water, which has got this strange, almost lime cordial-like colour to it, and that was something that the caravan park had mentioned, but it is just a little bit disconcerting. But anyway, it hasn't done me wrong yet. So we carried on my own. There was no one else following my path for good reason, like I mentioned. And then we got to the first signs where it had said Cradle Mountain Summit, and I was like, okay, we're getting there. It said it was only going to be a 2.5 hour return. Then I was like, okay, 2.5 hours, I can do that. But I have to say, folks, those 2.5 hours, well, at least the ascent was incredibly difficult and very technical, if I do say so myself. It's some of the toughest climbing I've ever done, because really there is no clear path to get to Cradle Mountain Summit. There are a number of various rocks that you just have to navigate in your own time, finding your own way, because each time you step, you could go in various directions, and you just see the mountain cliff face and a bunch of other sharp rocks either side of you with the wind and rain going down. So you have to take it incredibly slowly and just make sure that you just are holding on to something at all points. It was strange, really, because the rain, even though the rain was pelting down, it was by no means as slidey as it was on the rocks of Mount Amos that were a lot larger than these rocks. But still, there were at some points I was clinging on for dear life, just trying to keep myself as close to the mountain as possible so I didn't fall backwards. And really, if I wasn't as tall as I am, even though I'm lacking in flexibility, I was able to make big strides from rock to rock. Otherwise, I think I would have been pretty fucked, if that's probably the only way of putting it. And there were at some points where I felt that emotion once again, and sometimes had to retrace my steps and find another way. Sometimes I was having to reach over the backside of the rock to then hoist myself up onto the next level. But after about an hour and a half and listening to Lord of the Rings 2 Tower audiobook that was cutting in and out thanks to the rain throughout my journey, it was giving me good motivation to keep going, and it was really rewarding. Not because I'd made it to the top, just because I really enjoyed the technical aspect of the final ascent, and I highly recommend it to anyone else, even if the weather is terrible, to give it a try if you are in Tasmania, because it's really cool. It's very rare, or there are very few opportunities you'll have to do something like that without a guide. And I mean, there are points where you won't feel safe, but there's enough space and I shouldn't say space really between the rocks. There's enough closeness that if you were to fall, God forbid, it wouldn't be to your death, maybe just a minor injury. But it wasn't too bad. We made it to the top, and the wind, for about 30 seconds, just completely cooled off. And I had that moment of serenity just to kind of take in my thoughts, see the top, and at the summit there was this nice little, I don't know what to call it, podium, platform, which had said that the first time this summit had been conquered was in the early 19th century. And it gave you a compass telling you where all the other famous landmarks in the area were. So I thought that was pretty cool. Even though I wasn't able to take a photo of any of my endeavours passing Marion's Lookout, which was, it's annoying, but I know that I've done it, and hopefully you'll believe me. maybe the Find My iPhone that I've got set up with Nick or my dad. That might point out that I was once at the top of a mountain in the pouring rain in 4-degree weather, shall I also add. But just keeping walking kept me warm, which is great. I didn't feel too cold really at any points. There were moments where you kind of have to use a chain to pull yourself up the mountain whilst moving your legs at the same time. That chain was incredibly cold. And the descent from this summit was easier than I thought it was going to be, first of all, because I had one of the biggest assets on my body, my large backside, which then allowed me to cushion myself as I was almost stumbling from rock to rock, and then was able to slide down and use my feet to put myself in a position where I could gain some control and some position before moving to the next step. So that was great. No sunset, unfortunately. It kept on raining, but like I said, the descent and the walk kept going on, but it was a long day, but it was very rewarding. Even though the weather didn't hold up, I still had a fantastic time, which is a rare occasion that one gets to say that. But it was just such a phenomenal final ascent that it made up for the rest of the trek. And I don't think I'd ever walked so fast on my way back. And my feet, for some reason, didn't really hurt at all. So that was a massive bonus. And now I arrived back at the car, absolutely soaking wet, thinking, oh, you bloody idiot. You've got no towel, no spare clothing. But I did have a spare pair of shorts in the front of the car. So I've quickly whisked my full shorts on that I was wearing. I should also add that I did this whole trek in shorts, in the pouring rain, 5-degree heat. It's not heat, it's bloody cold, in shorts. And a number of people on the way asked, oh, why are you doing it in shorts? And I said, because shorts are my preferred lower bottom half outfit of choice, and they have never done me wrong. I've never felt cold in my legs, and it gives me lovely free range of motion, which was very much needed, I added. So I had to change those because they were absolutely soaked. But we are now sitting in the car feeling very happy with oneself. And tomorrow I hope to do another sunrise. So I have to get up pretty early. I think I'm going to get up around 5 o'clock to get to a place called Hanson's Peak, where the sun rises at 10 to 7, but I'm hoping to get up there about 6:30. So hopefully we make it up there. We make it for then, and I can see a bit more of Cradle Mountain than I did today, as it was covered mainly by fog and cloud, because the weather is meant to be a lot better and the skies are meant to be a lot clearer. So hopefully that sunrise is going to be monumental and one that I can talk about for the rest of my days. But for now, folks, I hope you've enjoyed listening to my battle against Pachamama and Cradle Mountain Summit. And thank you very much for listening. You'll hear from me in the next one.